If Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom faced off in 2028, who would win? Let's find out. Hello everybody, welcome to Politics Enhanced. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. And today I am very excited to talk about what would happen if Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom faced off against each other in a hypothetical 2028 matchup. Because right now, a lot of people are excited after Trump won and they're talking about J.D. Vance being the potential nominee. But we have to remember, folks, that there are a lot of potential Republican nominees who could be the candidate to go up against a Democrat in 2028. And we can't forget that, folks. So I thought today we would talk about Ron DeSantis, if he has a political future, and what exactly is at stake if it was Ron DeSantis versus Gavin Newsom. I kindly ask that you please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell down below so you don't miss another video. And without further ado, folks, let's get started. So, first of all, we're going to fill in the safe Democrat states. These are the states that Gavin Newsom would win, and it wouldn't even be close. He would sweep the entire West Coast and the East Coast handedly, with the exception of New Hampshire. However, I will say that New Hampshire would almost be a safe Democrat state because they historically don't like incumbents. I'll get to that later on in the video. We can't forget about Illinois too, and Colorado and New Mexico would both be safe Democrat states in this scenario. Now we're going to fill in the safe Republican states, which there are going to be quite a few. We have Montana, the Great Plains states, North and South Dakota. Texas would be safe. Ohio and Iowa, we can thank Trump for that. South Carolina, Atlanta, Alaska, and Florida and its 30 electoral votes, all safe for Ron DeSantis in this scenario. Now I would like to talk about the likely Democrat states, which there would be quite a few, and they would only be on the East Coast in this scenario. But first of all, we're going to start with Maine at large and New Hampshire. And the reason why I say these two states would be likely for Gavin Newsom is because Newsom is a bit of an interesting candidate. Although he is very unpopular nationwide, he does have strength in urban areas. I can prove this by showing the 2022 election results where we can see where he did very well in Los Angeles County or San Francisco County, even San Diego County, which is historically a more conservative leaning county. I am not saying that conservatives would vote for Gavin Newsom. What I am saying is that he does have strength in urban areas and he could potentially get the far left vote that he needs in order to win some of these states. Again, I'm not saying he would win the presidency. We'll find that out later. But in terms of New Hampshire and Maine at large, Gavin Newsom could make a play if he visits the urban areas and really gets that strong turnout that's needed to flip these states, which would be close if it was a different Democrat. Next, I'd like to take a look at Virginia, which I do believe would be likely Democrat. If it was Gavin Newsom, he would probably win the state by 5 to 6 points. It would be a similar victory comparable to Kamala Harris in 2024. However, the reason why I say this is, again, the urban area south of DC and Northern Virginia, that region has a lot of government workers, and even though Trump did very good in the state in 2024, you might see it be a Democrat hold in 2028, again because of the government workers and just the fact that Gavin Newsom has strength in the coastal region and the city urban region, and he probably could energize those voters enough to come out to win the state of Virginia. Of course, it wouldn't be a 10-point win like Biden back in 2020, but Gavin Newsom would have enough energy and momentum to keep the state of Virginia in the Democrat column, especially if it was against Ron DeSantis. Next, we also have Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. This area has just trended off a cliff. Harris won it by a decent margin. I think she won it by about 3 or 4 points. So I do think that in this scenario, Gavin Newsom would probably win it by about 5 to 6, as he could be slightly more popular than Kamala Harris. And next, I would like to talk about the states that would go to Ron DeSantis by a lean margin. And Ron DeSantis, in general, has his strength in the Sun Belt region, which is the southern region of the country. He does very good with Hispanic voters and to some extent even African American voters, but primarily he also does good with white working class voters, which is ultimately what propelled Trump to win the White House in 2016 and in 2024. So his strength, he would do very good in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia as well. I think Ron DeSantis would sweep these states and he would probably win them by at least 3% each. You could see varying degrees, like North Carolina could be a 5-point win for DeSantis, Georgia could be a 2.5 point win, Arizona could be a 3 to 4% win, and Nevada would be a 3-point win for DeSantis. And the reason why I don't think it would be a bigger win for DeSantis is because he's just not a good campaigner. We saw this when he ran for president the first time. Ron DeSantis just doesn't have that click or that communicative style that is needed to really energize and mobilize a base. However, I will say that DeSantis did very good in Florida, and even if you look at the Miami-Dade County, he won it big. He won it by over 10 points, which is unheard of for a Republican to pull that off. It's quite impressive. So it's not that Ron DeSantis can't campaign, it's that he doesn't have the same appeal as, say, Trump or Vance. But I think that could change if his record was put in the public spotlight, because one of his strengths is the fact that he made Florida a great state to live in, and he would get good publicity for record affordability, safety, good education, good elections, you name it. Florida would be at the center of the election, and people would see how Ron DeSantis treated and governed over the state of Florida as compared to Gavin Newsom, what he did to California. And again, that's kind of one of his weaknesses if you contrast the two candidates. Ron DeSantis was an excellent governor. He did a lot of good for the state of Florida. If you look at Gavin Newsom, there is a lot to attack him on, especially in states like Texas or Arizona or Nevada. He is not well liked over there. He is certainly not popular in those states, and he would have a very hard time campaigning in the Sun Belt, which does not like California, or Californians for that matter, as they are seen as kind of like a group of people who change the state's politics. So Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina would go to Ron DeSantis. And already, as you can see, Ron DeSantis is just 2 electoral votes short. Meaning, if this election was between DeSantis and Newsom, it would all come down to the Rust Belt, which is what we're going to move to next. So in terms of the lean Democrat states, we're going to start with the state of Minnesota, because Minnesota has always voted Democrat. We know this. This has been a historical trend since 1976, and although I do believe it has the capacity to flip, I think you would need a Republican like Trump or Vance who has that Rust Belt appeal that unfortunately Ron DeSantis just doesn't have. I don't see how he could flip the state of Minnesota. It is a white working class state. It's also a very unionized state, and that's why the Democrats have continuously won it in all these election cycles, is because the rural areas are unionized, the mining areas, which typically vote Democrat, again, because of the unions, and then you have the Twin Cities, and you also have the fact that the rural areas just don't come out, they don't turn out like they should. All of this is why Minnesota is a Democrat bastion. Now, I will say in 2024, we did see some positive signs in the state of Minnesota. Donald Trump came within 4% of winning the state of Minnesota. I don't necessarily think that Minnesota would get any closer than that, especially if it was DeSantis versus Newsom, but I do believe that Minnesota would be a 3 to 4 point win for Gavin Newsom, and we know that the closer Minnesota is, that means the Rust Belt trio is definitely up for grabs in this election. So of the 3 Rust Belt trio states left, I do believe that Gavin Newsom would win the state of Michigan by a lean margin. I think it would be over 2 points, but under 3%. It would probably be a 2.5% victory for Gavin Newsom. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. Trump did very good in 2024, barely won Michigan in 2016. Biden, if you look at this map, won Michigan by 2.8%. And I do believe that that would roughly be the same margin that Gavin Newsom would win in this hypothetical matchup. The reason why I say this is Michigan has a lot of urbanized areas. The rural areas just don't turn out enough. It is a heavily unionized state because of the automotive industry, which would help the Democrats. I don't think Gavin Newsom is particularly popular in the state of Michigan, but I do think that he would win it enough because Ron DeSantis doesn't have that urban appeal that's needed, especially in an area like Detroit or Traverse City or Lansing, Michigan, the capital. These are all liberal areas. You also do have a Democrat governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who didn't really support Kamala Harris in 2024, but I do think the Democrats would up their game in 2028 and try to help Gavin Newsom cross that finish line. So that leaves us with the 2 most important states in this election. It would be Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And these 2 states would absolutely decide the outcome of the presidential election. And when looking at Wisconsin, which is the state we're going to start at first, there's a lot of potential for the Republican, because in the last 2 out of 3 presidential elections, Republicans have won the state of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for that matter. But specifically Wisconsin, it was the most conservative of the Rust Belt trio. However, 2024, it was the most liberal of the Rust Belt trio. So looking at the map, it's a fair game for either candidate. Wisconsin Wisconsin is very favorable demographically. You have a large white working class voting population. You have some urban areas and some rural areas. And all in all, it would be a very close state in 2028. So this time around, it's hard to tell, but I think Ron DeSantis would barely win the state of Wisconsin by less than 0.5%. It would be a very narrow state for the Republicans. I do think Ron DeSantis could win it. He would probably have the support of President Trump, and he would go out there and campaign for Ron DeSantis. You would have a strong Republican operation there. The RNC is more competent this time around, and I do think Wisconsin and its 10 electoral votes would go into the DeSantis column. And that leaves us with the state of Pennsylvania, which would be the most important state in this election map because it's very possible that Gavin Newsom could also win in Wisconsin. But in Pennsylvania, it's a different story. Yes, you have a lot of rural areas. However, Republicans have done a very good job getting the Amish to come out and vote. And ultimately, I think with that alone and the fact that the Amish came out and unseated Bob Casey and delivered the state of Pennsylvania for Donald Trump, you also have the fact that Gavin Newsom isn't popular as much in the Midwest. I think Pennsylvania would be very close, but it would go to Ron DeSantis by, again, less than 1%. It wouldn't be the same margin of victory as President Trump, but it would be enough to get DeSantis over the finish line. And again, this map isn't a guarantee. You could see a scenario where Gavin Newsom comes along and he wins the state of Wisconsin, which means Pennsylvania would be the most crucial battleground state. Because Ron DeSantis would do very good in the Sun Belt, Gavin Newsom would do good in the coastal states, and it would really all come down to Pennsylvania, which would be the biggest swing state as it was in 2024 and 2020. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below for more content. And as always, my friends, thank you for listening. I hope you all have an amazing day. And until next time, Politics Enhanced, out.